September 1942, the Mediterranean. A British submarine, her own Admiralty, had marked for scrapping. In 7 days, HMS Turbulent would sink a destroyer, 2 transports, and a tanker, and return to port without losing a single man. Against a coastal defense network the Axis called impenetrable. This is how an obsolete submarine turned 1 week into one of the most productive patrol records in naval history. By autumn 1942, the Mediterranean was the most dangerous water on Earth for submarines. Axis air patrols blanketed the coast. Italian anti-submarine groups swept every convoy route. The loss rate for British submarines from Malta was approaching 30% per patrol, and yet the mission could not stop. Rommel's Africa Corps needed 60,000 tons of supplies every month to keep fighting. Every tanker sunk delayed a panzer division. Every transport sunk was fuel and ammunition that never reached the front. British submarines were the only platforms that could get inside the Axis defensive belt and reach those supply lines. Commander John Linton had one reputation inside the submarine service: patience. He closed the range past the point where most commanders turned back. He held his firing bearing longer than doctrine recommended. He accepted detection risks that others refused because he trusted his crew completely. That trust had been built across months of relentless drilling. It was about to be tested against the most heavily defended convoy route in Axis-controlled waters. On paper, Turbulent was not impressive. Submerged speed, 8.75 knots, standard 1930s sonar, machinery reliable but not modern. Faster German U-boats were operating in the same water. Quieter Italian submarines patrolled the same shallow coastal lanes she was about to enter. On every published specification, Turbulent was the weaker vessel. What no specification could measure was what the Royal Navy had built around her. The submarine school at HMS Dolphin had developed a training pipeline that produced approach officers capable of computing fire control solutions mentally while under depth charge attack. Sonar operators who could identify a destroyer's propeller signature at 7 miles. Stokers who could silence diesel machinery in 11 seconds without a confirmation order. The hull was the platform, the crew was the weapon. If you're finding this look at how the Royal Navy outthought its enemies worth your time, a quick subscribe keeps the channel going. The patrol began on September 12th. Turbulent slipped out of Malta submerged at 0310 to avoid the Axis dawn air patrols that had been running continuously for weeks. Linton set course for the supply lane off Cape Bon, the choke point where Axis convoys were forced to compress their route due to the shallow coastal shelf. It was the most dangerous stretch of water in the theater. It was also where the targets were. At 0847 on September 13th, the periscope watch sighted smoke. The contact resolved into the Italian tanker MV Utilitas, 4,362 tons, running independently with no surface escort. A single aircraft circled ahead on a standard sweep pattern. Linton waited. He watched the aircraft complete its turn away from the target. Then he came to firing depth. Range, 800 yards, 2 torpedoes. Both struck. Utilitas sank in 6 minutes. The aircraft turned back and dropped 2 pattern charges. Both fell 400 yards north of Turbulent's position. Linton held course and depth. No damage. No counterattack found them. September 15th, 1623 hours. The sonar watch reported propeller signatures on multiple bearings. Linton came to periscope depth. A convoy. 7 merchant vessels in 2 columns with 4 Spica-class torpedo boats on escort. Course 175 degrees, speed 8 knots, heading for Sicily. Linton studied the geometry. A conventional approach from ahead meant driving straight into the killing ground between the lead escorts. He took Turbulent deep instead, crossed beneath the convoy's track, came up on the far side, inside the screen. The approach took 58 minutes. At 1721 hours from 600 yards, he fired 4 torpedoes at the 2 largest ships in the starboard column. 3 struck. The transport MV Lerici, 3,040 tons, took 1 hit forward and went down in 4 minutes. The transport MV Nino Bixio, 7,137 tons, took 2 hits and was later declared a total loss. The escorts responded immediately. For the next 2 hours and 17 minutes, Turbulent absorbed 34 depth charges. None fell closer than 70 yards. Crockery shattered throughout the boat. A weld cracked in the forward torpedo space. Linton held course, held depth. The escorts lost contact at 19:38 hours. Turbulent surfaced under darkness to charge batteries and cleared the area at 14 knots. September 17th, 11:02 hours. The Italian destroyer Turbine came into view, running fast on a southerly heading. A destroyer at speed is the hardest target a submarine faces. The firing window is measured in seconds. Linton ordered maximum submerged speed and cut across ahead of her track. Closing range, 450 yards. 1 torpedo. It struck in the boiler room. The turbine broke apart and sank in 11 minutes. 26 men survived from a crew of 174. Turbulent returned to Malta on September 19th. 7 days at sea, 9 torpedoes fired, 6 hits, 4 vessels sunk or destroyed, more than 15,000 tons of enemy shipping removed from the Mediterranean, 34 depth charges absorbed without a single casualty. It was the most effective tonnage per torpedo patrol any T-class submarine had recorded to that point in the war. The consequences reached further than the patrol report suggested. The 2 transports sunk on September 15th had been carrying 4,800 tons of aviation fuel, 2,000 tons of ammunition, and hundreds of tons of vehicle parts destined for Rommel's forces in Libya. His logistics officer noted on September 19th that existing stocks would sustain offensive operations for no more than 11 days. That shortfall directly constrained German armored mobility at El Alamein the following month. 1 submarine, 1 week. A contribution to the battle that turned the entire North African campaign. Linton received the Distinguished Service Order. He did not survive the war. On March 23, 1943, HMS Turbulent was lost with all hands off Sardinia, most likely to a mine. Commander John Linton was posthumously awarded the Victoria Cross. His full citation covers 11 Mediterranean patrols, 21 ships sunk, 1 enemy submarine destroyed, and 90,000 tons of enemy shipping sent to the bottom. He had gone in when the loss rate was 30% per patrol. He had gone in every time. Every analysis that compared obsolete British submarine hulls to newer German and Italian boats missed the same variable. Not the sonar, not the speed, not the dive depth. The variable was the crew the Royal Navy had spent years building around that hull. The variable was a commander who held his approach longer than doctrine permitted because his crew had practiced until precision and nerve were the same thing. Turbulent was not the newest submarine in the Mediterranean, not the fastest, not the quietest. She was the most precisely handled submarine in that water, and that is why 7 days in September 1942 produced a result the entire Axis defensive network had been constructed to prevent. The recommendation to scrap her was the most expensive mistake the Admiralty never made.